everybody, my name is Tanya and this is my October wrap-up. So having filmed all of my catch-up wrap-ups, it's now time to wrap up a month at the time that it happens. Although it is already, several days into the month by now, but that's okay. I'm almost on time with this. So October was a bit of a mixed month for me. I still had a bit of study going on at the start of the month. I had 2 exams in the month of October. And then I had some time off work and had a bit more time to dedicate to reading with mixed success. I did get some reading done, but other things happened and I'm still getting myself back into reading again, and that's fine. So I've got quite a few things to talk about here in either case, and let's just get into it. So given that I started off the month still studying, the first 4 things I've got to show you here are all audiobooks, and the first one that I completed in the month of October is this one, which is Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. This is my second book that I've read by Anne Bronte. I've previously read and adored The Ten of Wildfell Hall. This one didn't live up to that height for me. This was a fun, enjoyable story while I was listening to it, but it hasn't really stayed with me all that much after finishing it. This one is a tiny little thing, so it didn't take me very long to listen to. The audio version that I listened to was narrated by Amelia Fox, who did a fantastic job. Amelia Fox is the actress who played Georgiana Darcy in the BBC adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, and her voice was perfect for this. I really enjoyed it. This one is the story of Agnes Grey, our protagonist, who decides she wants to become a governess in order to help her family out. Their family isn't very well off, and she wants to, she feels like she has to do something in order to contribute to that. And it is really this study of the pressure and the horrible situations that a governess is put into. It really looks at that impossible situation of disciplining other people's children in their home and walking that line between disciplining the children to make them behave and disciplining them too harshly so that they run to their parents and the governess gets in trouble for treating the children badly. It's that kind of catch-22 of, I want them to behave, but you have to treat them nicely. And it's, detailed in all its wonderful glory in this one, and it has apparently been influenced greatly by Anne Bronte's own time as a governess. So I did really enjoy this one. It really hasn't stuck with me all that much since finishing it. Like I said, it's quite a small little thing. It didn't take a lot of time to listen to, and my retention still through this exam study period hasn't been all that great, but I'm glad to have finally got to this one. The next book I completed, I decided I wanted to go with something light and easy. As I said, I was heading right into exams at that point in time. I decided to go with something that was quick, that was easy, that was fun, was something I was already familiar with, so it wasn't going to take a lot of brain capacity. And for that, I decided to go with A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is the first Sherlock Holmes mystery. This is the second time that I've read this now. I listened to the audio version narrated by Simon Vance, who did a fantastic job. I very much enjoyed this again. This one is the story of a man who is discovered murdered in an abandoned closed up house, and Sherlock Holmes has to put his mind to finding out what's happened. This is also when Sherlock Holmes and Watson are introduced to one another, so we get the starting of their relationship and the friendship that builds, and that kind of working relationship, which I find really interesting. I haven't yet read everything, all of the Sherlock Holmes books, and I would like to continue on. I do own the complete Sherlock Holmes on audiobook. It's a massive, I don't know how long audiobook, but I've been listening to it in parts. And so, as you'll see a little later in this wrap up, I did continue on to read another one of these. I'd like to continue on and finish the gaps. I think I've got the last 3 books still to go. I really enjoy Sherlock Holmes. I really enjoyed the way this is told. It was a great, just not requiring a lot of thought audiobook to put into this busy time, and for that it was perfect. The next one I don't own in a physical copy, but the audiobook that I listened to next was You by Caroline Kepnes, as narrated by Santino Fontana, and this of course was huge on BookTube a while ago. I never got to it, but I heard very good things about it, and particularly very good things about the audiobook that was highly recommended. I think I picked it up on audiobook around that time, but have never had the opportunity to get to it. I decided maybe this was the time. Again, I wanted something that was easy, and I thought this would be particularly compelling to listen to, and to kind of take my mind off the study that I was doing and have that kind of mind break. So what better way to do that than reading from the perspective of a stalker? This is the way my brain works. So You, as you will no doubt remember, is the story of Jo, and Jo is watching a woman, and it's told in second person. It's all directed at her. So you do this, you come into the shop, you you, all through it. And it's inside his mind, looking at her, this woman that he becomes obsessed with, and takes steps to become involved in her life. And it's a really interesting book, and I really enjoy things like this, if enjoy is the right word, because you're there with the narrator, and so you're feeling this connection to him in some way. And while everything that he's doing is absolutely horrendous and horrible and disgusting, there's some part of you, because you are there inside his mind, that wants him to succeed as such. And so, when he's trying to put schemes in place, and you feel that sense of frustration with him when that fails, or that sense of tension of whether it's going to come off. And it's such an interestingly uncomfortable and wonderful position to be put into, to be taken out of yourself and be forced to be in the mind of somebody like this. I think it's completely fascinating. I definitely think a lot of the hype was warranted with this one. I don't know whether I'm going to continue on with the second book at this stage. I am intrigued, but part of me also thinks that it was perfect just as this one book. It was definitely a good pick in terms of taking my mind off things and just having a pure escapist read, escapist to a horrible, horrible, horrible place and a horrible mind that was completely fascinating, and definitely enjoyed this one. Then I went back to Sherlock Holmes and listened to the second book. This one is The Sign of the Four, and again, I really enjoyed this. Second time around reading it, first time listening. Again, Simon Vance's voice was perfect for this. This is the second adventure for Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. This one is the story of Mary Morstan, who has a mystery surrounding her, and she comes to Sherlock and Dr. Watson for their help, and they get swept up into this mystery about kind of a treasure and a sinister man with a wooden leg. And it, again, was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. It was a perfect audiobook choice at the time when I needed it. And I'm very much looking forward to continuing on with more Sherlock Holmes stories on audiobook in the future. This was a great way to spend a few hours, and I would highly recommend them. Next up, we've got the first book that I was able to complete in the month of October. This is something that I've been working on for quite a while. I'd started it while I was still studying and reading it in very small portions, while at the same time wanting to devour it but just not having the time to devote to it. I finished it up after I finished my last exam. I loved it to bits, and that is Den of Wolves by Julie Aurelia. This one I was very kindly sent by the publisher, Pan Macmillan, here in Australia. They reached out and asked whether I would like a copy, and I said yes, please, because this was my most anticipated book of 2016. Anything by Julie Aurelia is super exciting, and so I really enjoyed the opportunity of getting to read this one. I filmed a separate review video about this one where I talk about this and the series in general. This is the third and final book of her Black Thorn and Grimm series, with no spoilers, so I'm working on editing that at the moment, and that will be up soon, either before this video, in which case I'll link it down below, or after, so look out for that. This one's another fantastic book by Julie Aurelia. I absolutely loved it. The previous books in the series I've listened to on audiobook. This one I obviously read in the physical form, but the audiobook has since come out, so I might have to listen to that at some point soon as well, just to kind of finish that off. As with everything by Julie Aurelia, I absolutely adored this one, so check out my review video to see what I thought in a little bit more detail. Then we had Dewey's 24-hour readathon. I've already done a wrap-up of the readathon, which I will link down below, so I'm not going to talk about the books in detail here. But for that, I completed The Hobbit by J.R. Tolkien. I completed the next Animorphs book, which was The Forgotten by K. Applegate. And I also read a graphic novel, which was the first volume of I Hate Fairyland, which is Madly Ever After by Scotty Young. And then I made a start on the next book that I've got to talk about here. So after Dewey's 24-hour readathon was over, I completed this one, and that is The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. As I've been talking about for ages and in quite a lot of videos lately, I am finally rereading this. It's been an absolute joy. I love this just as much this time around. It's been wonderful being back in the world. I don't think I'm going to talk about this too much until I complete the whole thing, because it is technically just one big story that was originally intended to be published as one volume, but it's now, commonly The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King, but it does make up one big epic story. So I think I'm going to wait until I finish The Return of the King before talking about this in any great detail. But basically, I am loving this so much. I'm reading The Two Towers at the moment. It's taking me longer than it should because I haven't been able to settle down to reading and other things have been going on. But I am fully immersed in the world of Middle-earth, and it is glorious. And then the final book that I completed in the month of October was another audiobook, and I'm still not quite sure how to talk about this one, so this is going to be interesting. And that is The Master Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. This one I listened to an audio version. The translation that I've got here is translated by Michael Glennie, but I found when I was trying to find my place in this book that the translation I listened to is actually very different to this one. And I've been trying to track down the translator of the audio version I listened to, and I believe that one was translated by Michael Carpelson. But in either case, I listened to The Master Margarita, and I joke with Michael from Knowledge Lost on Twitter that my review of this one is basically going to go, I have no idea what just happened, 4 stars. And that's like really how I feel about this. It's a complete kind of crazy whirl that I come out of going, what just happened? But I loved it. So The Master Margarita is basically the story of what happens when the devil comes to Moscow and the havoc that he wreaks there and the lives that he touches, and the mischief that is played, and it's a lot of ridiculous shenanigans going on. It's him and some of his offsiders, including a black cat called Behemoth, and it kind of culminates in them throwing this ball, and I really, really enjoyed it a lot. And so a lot of it is just kind of this series of ridiculous events that take place while the devil and his associates are in Moscow, and the ridiculous things that happen, and the confusion that reigns, and the people that are going out of their minds, and it's a lot of fun. And then running through this is kind of a second narrative, which is the story of Pontius Pilate and the trial he holds for a man named Yeshua Hanostri. And that comes up, one, as a story that the devil is telling to somebody, but then it is later shown in the story that a man known as the Master is writing. And The Master Margarita, the title, this man who has written a novel, a story about Pontius Pilate and his love of Margarita, and how they are kind of caught up in the visit of the devil, and everything that happens from there. So, of the two kind of story arcs, I definitely enjoyed the storyline set in Moscow following the devil much more than I did the story of Pontius Pilate. There's kind of a section at the beginning that we get, and then there's quite a large section later in the story that goes back and kind of fills in the rest of that story. And at that point in time, I was kind of chafing to get back and see whether we would get back to the other storyline and what happened next. And it did eventually go back to the other, and we get a good wrap up at the end, and I definitely enjoyed it. But I found myself longing to go back to the other storyline when it focused on that. So I definitely had a preference for that one, but it was very intriguing as well. I definitely enjoyed it. I'm not quite sure what else to say other than that. As I said, it feels like this complete whirlwind of what on earth did I just read? But it works. I've heard a lot of great things about this, and I'm so pleased that I finally got around to reading it. The audio version that I listened to was very good. I definitely enjoyed it. It was narrated by a man named Julian Reen-Tut, and it's a Naxos audiobook, and I definitely think that that was a good way to go with this. He, of course, gets a lot of the Russian pronunciation a lot better than I would having read it, so I think I got a lot out of it, getting that right context for it as well. There's a lot of place names and the names of different people that I wouldn't be able to approach, so I think it was good to have it read to me in that regard too. So I definitely recommend the audio version and the audio route for this in that respect. It was great. I definitely would recommend it if you like ridiculous hijinks and are okay with maybe not being 100% sure what's going on some of the time. I definitely enjoyed it. And so that was everything that I completed in the month of October. Again, go check out my Jewish 24-hour readathon wrap-up to see what I thought about the books that I read during that period. And again, do check out my review of Jenna Balls, where I talk a little bit more fully about what I thought about that one. If you've read any of these books or have any questions about any of them, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you thought of them. As always, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.